thank you all for coming. It's exciting. We have people from mostly from Charleston, but not all from Charleston. Hillary, our guest today. First of all, just to introduce, if you're here, we're going to talk about millennials and leading teams across the generation. And I'm going to tell you, Hillary is our guest expert. She is a legitimate millennial and a really awesome leader at Parallon, which is a subsidiary part of Health Corporation, Health HCA. So how did we get this topic? This topic came up, it started in August of last year. I was giving a workshop to a group of Delta airline executives, high level, and the topic of the workshop had nothing to do with millennials. It was executive presence. But I asked everybody, as I often do, like, what would you like to learn today? And more than half of them wanted to know, how can I manage these millennials? How can I motivate them? And then that was the first time it really got on my radar, because I'm a mother of 3 millennials. I hadn't really had any problems with millennials. But as through the fall, I got that question over and over and over from different companies, different sectors. And then Hillary and I met at MUSC, that's the Medical University of South Carolina, many years ago, probably 2014 or 2013. And then she went on her way and I went on my way. But I realized that she's a millennial. We've worked together. All my private coaching clients are in their 30s, which makes them millennials. So Hillary, so that's why the topic. Hillary's a great person. Has a team now. She's a director level. She's in the education training space in healthcare in the revenue cycle, and I'm excited to have her here. So first I'm going to see, what is a millennial in the first place? I'm going to launch a poll and see if you can get the correct answer for when the millennials were born. Nobody's guess. Okay, somebody. To see what exactly makes a millennial. Because I was actually surprised. I thought I had 3 millennial children, but really just 2. Okay. Most of you are wrong. According to Pew Research, according to the of course, you can have different sources and it's not that huge of a deal. So don't feel bad. But whoever guessed 1981 to 1996, that is the right answer. Of course, 1980 to 1995 is just 1 year off on each end. But that's the age group we're talking about. So these people would be like what, in their 20s, almost to age 40. So Hillary, why don't you tell us about, we want to start off by talking about the myths that people believe about you awful millennials, lazy, entitled people.
Sure. So I think, especially given working in multiple environments, I mean, I've been in the public education sector. I've worked across clinical and revenue cycle. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is they want everything and fast. Mm-hmm. They don't have the experience. They're overly ambitious. They don't know how to work their finances. They're lazy. They live with their parents too long. There's just this multitude of things around the millennial group. And it's a really big group. And I think what's really fascinating is I'm a researcher by trade. I love to read. And if you go back and you research this has happened for every generation since the baby boomers. You literally will find through Newsweek, through the New York Times, through your major magazine titles, that the Me movement happened with them too. And so that every generation's been labeled this, that they have their own titling and naming mechanism where they're not well understood, or that
Mm-hmm.
they want too much, or that they don't have this or they don't have that. The millennial group especially came in at a really interesting time because that's when technology really took off.
True, true.
And so it's our group especially. I'm personally not a big fan of putting things in a box because
Right.
there's so many different things. So having a big name for everybody. Sure, we have similar characteristics, but at the end of the day, we're all so very different.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're pleasers by trade. A lot of us want to do really good. We want to do a good job in what we do, and that's where you see the ambition and the laziness factor, because we want a different way to do our work,
Mm-hmm.
and how we do our work, I think
Mm-hmm.
is often misinterpreted.
Yes.
And so I think businesses are getting hip to that. I don't know if that's necessarily remote work, but the how the work is getting done, I think is now being observed, which is really helpful.
Well, one thing I have, this is just anecdotal observation, am seeing that the millennials, the younger folk, they want to have meaning. That's really important to actually, it's not just being a cog in the wheel. What do you think about that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have to have, it's not all about like finding your passion, I don't know if it's necessarily that. And I don't think it's fair for me to speak on everybody's behalf. I don't particularly like generalizations. I think there's themes that run throughout each of these age groups.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having meaning in your work is incredibly important. That's part of the reason I do what I do. I love when somebody is able to do something because of something I contributed to. That's part of the reason I got into the learning space. Because
Right.
if I'm able to make your life easier because of something I've helped build, one of the reasons I wanted to get into leadership was the coaching aspect.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody becomes something better because of something that we've built together, they have more success because of something that we've done together, that brings value to my world. And so having meaning is incredibly important to what we do. But I don't think that that's isolated just to the millennial group.
I don't either. I mean, because I feel the same way. But and actually, if you go back, there's that story about the two people, bricklayers, who were building Notre Dame Cathedral in the 12th century, and one of them was laying bricks, and one of them was building a cathedral. So I think you really nailed it. It's just that the young people get bad press and certain labels at a certain point. I'm gonna. You want to go? I'm gonna share the second slide. I just put the questions on the slide. So we covered some of the myths and communication essentials for team members of all ages. So for some of you are new to my world, I forgot to introduce myself. Laura Camacho. I'm a communication coach, and I have a company dedicated to communication skills training and coaching. And Hillary and I share a passion for great communication and as a tool for getting things done and building relationships. And in Hillary's current position, she's managing people. I think all of them are remote, or a big part of them, and they're different ages. So just how are you dealing with that? What are your communication tools or your principles for, kind of keeping everybody on the same song sheet amidst a lot of change? Because healthcare, like all companies, but maybe even more in the healthcare industry, you've just got this tsunami of change, of new technology, new changes, new regulations every single day.
Yeah. So I think the first piece is recognizing, one, that we're people.
Mm-hmm.
So coming in from the human aspect, and it's really easy to come in really robotic and be like, work, work, work. And I think you got to start with people first and talking to them. So I wasn't very good at this in the beginning. It's not like you get a guidebook on how to be great with people, or how to be great with relationships, or how to be a great manager, or how to be a great leader. And I've had to learn through hardships and things that I didn't do right on how to get better at that. And so coming into this position, I spent a lot of time up front and just saying, hey, I'm new here, and how are you? And who are you, and what do you do, and what do you like, and what does that mean here in revenue cycle, but what does that mean in your world, and what are some of the challenges you're dealing with, and just starting at a very basic level. And a lot of the stuff of communications is just that. Talk to people. It's not about trying to figure out what the next project is. It's just talking to people. And a lot of the times, just by listening, some of the very things that need to be solved come out of those, instead of trying to find the next solution or the next technology. Just talk to them for a minute, and you'll get to the places that you need to go by and a lot of times they're dying to tell you some things because they didn't get that opportunity.
Right, so true. I mean, the human need to be heard, and
Yeah.
yet I know I've been in situations. I mean, I've always had the confidence to speak up, at least at some level. But I know that sometimes there are situations where people don't feel like it's safe, or they're gonna get in trouble if they speak up. So, and you and I have spoken about Radical Candor, which is a great book that I'd recommend. And you're so good. What was that you were saying, that you're incapable of not shooting it straight? I mean,
Of not being candid.
Yes, and not yes.
Who knows me knows this. Yeah.
She tells it like it is. So how do you create that space so everybody on your team feels that same freedom to say things that maybe other people don't want to hear?
Well, I think that comes at different levels, right? I can't ask somebody, and I don't want them to be a replica of me.
Yeah.
But it's getting to a place of what are you trying to get out of a conversation? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? And so if you have a person with a confidence issue, well, what's causing that?
Mm-hmm.
One, if you don't feel good about you,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be really hard to have a communication with another person. They're not going to give you that. You've
Mm-hmm.
got to find out where that's coming from for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't exclusive to millennials either, but I think I can tell you where it's coming from with our age group. And I've experienced it myself, where you feel like you have to be in this certain box. A leadership looks like this. Well, guess what? I can tell you right now, I don't fit in a box. I've never fit in a box. I've been this outgoing, smiley, ridiculously positive, full of humor, live out loud person my entire life. And that's never fit in a box.
Mm-hmm.
But I care deeply and wildly about the work that I do and the people that I'm with. And that's never going to be in a book.
Right.
And that's never going to fit some process and policy. So you have to find out what the individual is and what that means in the wider scope of what you're doing. And connecting with people at that level and finding the root of what it means for them and how they fit into that stuff, not trying to make them fit to what you're doing, but how they fit together and what they bring to the table. That makes the biggest difference. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think you summed it up, like treating people like people and just having conversations. It's amazing how powerful that can be.
Yeah.
Let me see what our next. So we covered some communication essentials for like talk to people. Oh, let's talk about technology now. So we all love technology.
Yeah.
It's here to stay. It's always changing. It's great when it works.
Yeah. So, I love technology. I'm a huge user of it. I'm all about the experience of it, and I have really strong opinions around it. So and Melissa, I don't know if you're on, I'm a pen pal with her kid. I love handwriting. I love writing checks. I get made fun of for this, right? But I also love applications, but for the use of it. And I don't need an application for everything in my life. So I use things that make sense for me. But I think we have a huge opportunity right now to kind of wipe out the noise. We use tools because we don't maximize the ones that we have. We don't know the capability of our existing. So we end up bringing on more because we don't know what we have, or we don't have the time to explore it. And businesses today are being tasked with moving at Mach 5. And it's really hard. It's really hard. It's amazing and incredible, the work that's being done with what they're being tasked to do from a compliance perspective, from legal, from IT, and technology is trying to keep up with that. And it's confusing. And it's, and you have all these really savvy people who are trying to make things different through AI and through things that are a little bit more natural for us. But from a business perspective, every time we bring on something new, there's a downstream impact for that. And that's difficult. And so you'll have 15 platforms, and then you have all these things. And a lot of times those don't talk to each other.
Right.
So how do you balance that? Right. And so I have a deep love for technology, but I also have I think it's a balancing act of, is it really serving the need, or is it making it more challenging?
And do you think that we also are falling for the bright, shiny object? I mean, why we adopt new things before exploiting or leveraging fully what we already have?
Yeah, I believe in the power of assessment. You'll hear me say that all the time. I'm a fundamentals person. I really am. Have we been given the time? And I appreciate the speed and the rate, and businesses they don't have a choice a lot of the times with how quickly things have to move, because the world's expensive, right? Mm-hmm. But the power of assessment, what are we trying to do and why are we trying to do it? What purpose does this serve? And then the technology is the vessel, right? Technology is the vessel. So if we haven't had the time to explore what we have, how do we know that we need something else?
Right. Well, I love what you're saying about the fundamentals. And I think that is, with the bright, shiny object that we get, attracted, and we forget the fundamentals. But a friend of mine, works for Matthew Kelly, who's written a book about culture, and I'm reading. He shares this story. It's about creating a dynamic culture in your company. And he's interviewing a football coach, national football coach. And it's in the late fall, and he's asking, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl the next time? And the coach says, oh, it's going to be the same team that always wins. And Matthew Kelly says, but it's a different team every year. No, well, it's really the same team every year. And Matthew Kelly says, well, what are you talking about? He said, it's the team that has the discipline to master the fundamentals every single year. Now we have a message from somebody. Hillary, this is from Megan. She's here in town. Let's see. So glad to see you share your doctrine on communication. I can attest that as a manager, you nurture what makes your team tick, both as a group and individually. Thank you. And Bonnie says, hello, millennial here. Here we go. Question. How do I persuade a baby boomer set in their ways that their way isn't necessarily the best way? Not to generalize. So, Hillary?
Well, one, it's depends on what the topic is, but two, are they really set in their ways, and are you digging in? Right. I always have to ask myself that. Am I digging in on my end, and am I being set in my ways? And
right. And also, is there a false dichotomy? Because so many things is like, in my way or your way. Well, really? Are those the only two possibilities?
Right.
Yeah. So that's another possibility.
And what's the story? Yeah, what's the story?
Yeah, to dig into the story, to find out, motivators, emotions. And I think a lot of times, if we affirm the person, even if we don't like their idea, that we're going to get a lot further. But sometimes people identify so strongly with their story or their situation that they can't move forward until they've been heard. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, well, too, I think it's really easy to go, I don't like that person. Uh-huh. And then it's already, I can't go into conversation to remove the behavior from the person. And so it's really hard to have a conversation. And so can you get to a place? One, you have to ask yourself, can I get to a place where I can do that? Mm-hmm. Can I remove how I feel personally to the behavior, and is this effort worth that?
Right. Yeah. Because I remember when I was training Epic, which is a software for physicians and nurses and all clinicians, but it's the physicians especially, you teach them, oh, you can do it faster and shorter this way. And they would say, I don't want to learn that. Right. I know my way. And that's like for them, the perceived cost of learning a new behavior, the benefit was lower than the benefit of learning it. And in that case, I mean, it was, in that particular situation, it was their problem because it's their time being taken up. Yep. So sometimes people do prefer, old school or the old way. And so you have to really dig in deep. But I think affirming the person and looking for other alternatives, that it's not just A or B, but maybe there's some other options out there. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see what else we have here. Optimizing technology. Okay, this is a similar question. Success tips for working with older direct reports on your team. Those wise people, the older ones, have just dropped something. So Hillary, I'll let you speak to that.
So I think one, it's acknowledgement of a wide array of experiences, right? So everybody brings experience to the table. And I think one thing for me personally that I greatly appreciate about anybody on my team is the fact that they bring something to the table. So I can tell you right now on my team, I've got folks who have 20 years of experience in revenue cycle. That is 20 years of experience that I don't have in that specific area. I recognize that. I appreciate that. I admire that. And I'm proud of that. Good. And you have to be able to say, number one, none of us have experience in everything. But two, that's the whole reason why we have teams. Right. And you're not supposed to know everything. And you leverage those things and you learn from them. And there's experience in things that I have, in a wide array of education practices that they don't have. And it's a beautiful thing, right? And I have experience in life pieces that they don't, and so do they. And so what I love about my older colleagues is that they have operational experience as well that I don't. And I tap into that because they've been through some of the bumps and bruises in a business that I haven't yet. And guys who are my age and younger, it's okay for them to tell you haven't quite experienced it yet. But for my older colleagues who might be on the phone, be patient with us on that too, because we're trying to learn that. So when we're eager to figure that stuff out, it's because we want to be of service and help in that. And so it's a wonderful recognition to find a common goal, because we're trying to get better in the business and we want to be your successors and we want to be really great in these operational pieces and in the business. And I love tapping into that expertise. I can listen to some of the people that I work with all day on the experience that they have, but how they apply it. And the application of that knowledge is where the bread and butter is. It's not the fact that you have 20 years of experience, it's what you did with it.
Exactly.
What that looks like. You
didn't have the same year of experience 20 times. Right. I've got a question here from Megan. It says, how do we have those? This would make my work more impactful to me. Conversations with our supervisor and higher level leadership. Any advice? I think she's really dealing with wanting to seek change, dealing upward communication, which we all know is the most delicate kind. I'm just going to jump in with my 2 cents and then you run with it. But my 2 cents is always to tie in what you want with what you know about those higher level leaders, or the company or objectives or the company values. I think anytime you take the time to connect the dots for other people, especially the upper levels, we're all busy. They supposedly are busier than you are in theory. So if you say, I want this, and this is going to have the impact of affecting these values that we have, or this priority that you have, whether it's building community or profits or reaching a different market segment. When you can tie, making your work more impactful, I'm guessing you have something specific in mind, but I would definitely tie it to priorities of the person you're talking to. Hillary, what would you say?
Well, I think you have to be really clear on what it is that you want. And this is just coming from me, Megan. I think if it's always all about me or all about you, you're never really going to be satisfied. If you're always looking for internal everything, I mean, you've got to figure out what it is that you really want, to be clear on who you're asking for support. And is it the right person? Is it your direct leader that's the right person to connect with? Or is it somebody else in the organization that's going to help with that? If you're looking for change in work and projects that you're supporting and things that are direct report pieces, then yes. But you got to be really clear in your ask, and you got to know what it is that you're asking for. But if it's for growth and operational and those kinds of things, then identify networks and folks within your organization who can help support that. But I feel strongly about things not being super always internally focused on just, I feel like I will never be satisfied if it's all just about what I want all the time. So, but that's just me.
Very good. I think we have one more official question, and then we're gonna what really matters in working through the generational differences? Well, I know Hillary has some thoughts on this, and if you have any more questions, we'll stay on as long as we have questions to answer. So,
yeah, if I could give just a couple things of advice on this, is one, let go of the assumptions that because somebody's older than you, they don't know something, or if somebody's younger than you, they don't have the experience in it. Assumptions are really dangerous.
they are.
And there's another thing with multi-teaming spaces today. You may have seen somebody in observation on a project 2 years ago and only seen a slice of their capability. And now 2 years later, they've acquired 15 more skills that you're not aware of, but you're still biased to what they did 2 years ago. So assumptions are really, really dangerous. So back to the fundamentals of having the conversation, of getting to know people, talk to people. I have found the differences of me with other people really aren't that great. I have a lot of friends who are significantly older than me, and guess what? We have a great time. I really don't see numbers with people. I really don't. It's the fact that we have common interests and we connect, and they're good people. So this whole generational difference for me at the end of the day is, do we share common goals, and are we working on common things? Okay, great. Okay, great. You happen to be 55. I really don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But also not being afraid to be vulnerable and have conversations around things. You don't know it, that's okay. Do you have to know it? Does it really matter? So that vulnerability, if you want to coin a term, having those kinds of conversations too.
All right, we've got a question here in the Q&A. This is from Kirsten, who's calling you or tuning in from Pennsylvania. What is the best way to handle an employee that is entitled? I have experienced this with a few millennials that have worked for me.
Oh, well, that's tough. And I think it's going back to the conversation to, one, find out where that may be coming from. I think you got to pull them into a one-on-one situation and come at it from a, hey, I'm experiencing some challenges and I'd like to better understand. And here's some things, and be very specific in your observations and say, here's what I'm seeing. And if they're a good worker, I think there's two scenarios to that. If they're a good worker and they're having good performance, or if they're not having good performance. And so you're going to have to figure out what that pathway looks like. But I think people are owed open conversation, but I think that you have to be careful in your approach, and you have to know what your intention is. So is your intention to keep them on because they're a quality employee who happens to have some behavioral issues that are causing a problem? Or is your intention to not keep them on as an employee and you're looking for an exit strategy? So figure out your intention first on how you want to handle that, even though the entitlement piece is a problem. And hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that entitlement is a product of poor parenting, and I think it can come at any age, but I mean, I do think you do see that more in the younger people. I don't know if that's always been the case with younger people, but you know, when parents don't teach the child, no, you can't have everything you want.
Yeah, or how to share.
Or how to share, not getting your way, then it does definitely cause problems. All right, any more questions here? I want, let's see, I think that's all the questions. Before we close, I have just a little announcement that next week I have this free challenge on executive presence. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's a big, humongous topic, and I'm famous for taking these huge topics and just, you know, delivering in very small chunks, pieces that I think that really give the most value. Like, I'm a big believer of the 80-20. Like, I'll find the 20% of a topic that's going to give you 80% of the value. So there's just 5 exercises, one Monday through Friday, that you do and report into a Facebook group for networking if you want. Anyway, I'm going to send that out in the email. Hillary, do you want to close with, oh, we got another question. Oh, this is from Roger, who's here in Charleston. What if I'd like people being together at the office while younger people rave about working from home?
Well, work from home is a really hot topic right now. For me, do you have to have one or the other? I think it's coming up with a common agreement around what works best for your people. If you sit down with your folks and say, okay, here's the goals for the business. Here's the objectives that we're marching towards. Here's the deadlines in which to do that. And all of that's really clear. Does it matter the environment in which they're conducting that? And give people the choice if that's okay with your business, because that's really your call. And I don't know your dynamic, your organization, but let people choose the environment in which that's happening. So we have a mixed environment. We have some people working from home. We have some people who are in the office, and then we have a mix of people coming in a couple of days a week. But the expectations are set. So I think when you have clear expectations around what's to be done, the way in which they do it can be really defined by them, and then the technology being available.
So Hillary, with the workers, I like the mixed model, you know, working from home and the office, because to me, you get the best of both worlds, but it's not always feasible. But do you feel like your remote workers are, you know, connected enough to the mothership when they're working from home?
Well, I think you have to take the time to foster that. And I think that takes effort to do that, but I think it can be just as good if you spend the time to do that. And we spend a lot of time doing that with our folks. Where I can only speak to where I am, but yeah, it takes just as much effort as it would if you were connected in an office. You can have disconnect in an office setting too.
True, it is true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Hillary, for taking time and getting your technology set up. This was awesome. We really appreciate hearing from somebody who's in the trenches with all the technology in healthcare, multi-generations. Great content. Thank you, Hillary, for sharing. And thank you, everybody. We'll catch you at the next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.